other organizations in the past and the success rate for them being able to push something like this, specifically for since you're an outsider and you're gonna have to, yes, you're trying to build trust by using someone they already trust, but what's the success rate in the past for doing something like this?
We know that from a couple of studies that we looked at, that women's organizations are often the ones that partner with governmental organizations to deal with water issues, like installing a toilet and maintaining it or something like that. They will be the push behind getting that done in their community. As far as partnering with outside sources, I think that is our most pressing question right now, is to try and figure out who has worked with and a precedent for working with an outside partner.
Right, again, to what you just said, specifically with respect to the women's organization that you guys picked, what is their success criteria in working well with outside organizations, not just a generic number? If you're gonna, if you're gonna state that this is our partner on the ground, and they make or break your case, or make or break your business model, so it'd be very useful to have that data, and for your credibility and their credibility.
But that's a lot of the same encouragement or direction that we've gotten from Solar Island Society as well. So it's all about having connection with the ground and making sure that they're the link to the people that you're serving. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right.
Right, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I just want to know, do you feel confident that this would be something that would be used? And if not, what are your concerns?
Personally, the idea I think sells. We've seen it work with the work that the Solar Island Society has done. They have examples where it has sold.
And and personally, I think of something like the invention of the toothbrush, where someone invented that, somebody told everybody this would be a good idea to use, and convinced people to begin using it to the point where now it's socially unacceptable not to. I think it can work. I think small solutions are the things that do work in the end.
And we're not asking them to change what they're doing. They're already boiling water. They know how to put a pot, a stove, heat it up. All we're basically telling them is that you don't have to do it as much. You don't have to use so much fuel. You can be saving on fuel. You can be spending less time in the kitchen, whether it be in air pollution, things like
only
that.
15% of the people you're targeting are actually boiling their water today.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a huge number of people who aren't treating the water in any way, shape, or form. So that's a different learning curve that they're coming up, or a different sale for you.
Correct, right.
So.
But I kind of like the fact that they segmented to a group that's already inclined to understand that it's important,
Sure, but I think in terms of, again, getting back to that connection between how much of the problem are we attacking.
Right. Yeah.
The scope and how you scale it up beyond that initial target market, I think is something to think about. I don't know if you need it in your initial presentation, but I think you need to sort of recognize the limitations of your initial solution.
Yeah, I mean, our market it has a number on it with that. So.
Well, and a lot of that too, I mean, what we found through some of our research, a lot of the people living in the slums don't actually believe their water is contaminated. With such a high incidence of gastrointestinal diseases, they actually think it's just a common occurrence, like a common cold, and they don't actually understand, they don't seem to quite correlate that the drinking water leads to these gastrointestinal issues.
There's a way to avoid it.
So, I mean, this is another big part of working with a local group that has already established trust. I mean, if we can work with them, help explain to them what's going on with their water, then they can disseminate that information elsewhere and maybe convince people to be more inclined to start heating their water using this pasteurization indicator.
And there's a huge barrier. I mean, boiling water takes a lot of fuel. Boil a pot of water, it takes more fuel than if you're heating up something.
I have a question about that. How important is the fuel to the daily budget of a family? I didn't see anything on that. I saw fuel usage, but that doesn't mean anything to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And where do they get it? Do they pay for it?
Currently, most people in the slums try to burn either trash or firewood that they can collect. The government subsidizes about a 14.2 cylinder LPG per family. So families can buy subsidized LPG costs about 50 cents per kilogram. Often we've seen that 1 cylinder isn't enough for a family, they need 2, which gives them a need of 30 kilograms per month. We assumed for our calculations that all of that would be subsidized, but often it's not. Unsubsidized, it can cost twice as much. So from what we've seen, we speculate that at 50 cents a day, that's $15 a month, and from an average budget of between $50 and $300, that can be anywhere between, whatever that is, 5 to 10%.
Yeah, my question, I mean, concerns would be related to the people you are targeting are the totally uneducated people. So would they even understand the difference when you are talking, this is boiling, this is pasteurization, this is the difference between 75 degrees Celsius and 100 degrees Celsius. So they would have like a total distrust. I mean, they'll not, I don't know how much they will be able to gather the fact what you're trying to explain with this product to them.
I think it's really hard for us to explain any product to anyone in the market in India, let alone the lowest of the educated. I think that's the really big importance of the women's organizations, because if we can explain it to them, they can explain it to their peers, who can explain it to their peers, who can reach the lower educated.
And the lobby itself has gone through iterative design processes. So it started out, I think, as something with just a piece of wax, even little things like changing the color so that it's green, so that they can very distinctly see. So there are things that have been done to the design of the actual device to help make it more user-friendly. But I mean,
what's the indication? What happens to it? How do you affect?
Basically,
change color or filter?
yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, you should bring the product when you go to the finals. Bring the product with you. Pass it
That's one I got sent to India.
It got sent to India?
Yeah.
Good. So they could use it?
Yep, and try it out. Yeah, so basically it comes in, wax is at the top, it heats up. After a certain amount of time, the wax basically settles to the bottom. So you can see the wax is on top, it drops to the bottom, then you know. And basically to reuse it, you just flip it upside down, and then you've got it ready to go again.
So who owns the WAPI? I mean, do you have to pay someone for the right to make it?
That's a good question. We're working with, there's a company called North Star Devices that someone mentioned, that it's 2 retired engineers that basically produce these in their basement. We're talking with them. Their whole goal is to get it distributed and manufactured in different spots. So we're working through some of the idea of if it's proprietary, what part of it is. It seems like the wax might be the crucial thing. So something like the wax, because it's so specific to melt at exactly 75 degrees, might be something that has to be either specially made or purchased or imported or something like that. But the goal of Solar Urban Society and North Star Devices is to get this out and get people manufacturing it in country.
Just, as I think I said to the other team too, when you look at your assumptions, and you've mentioned a lot of them, but they aren't in your presentation fully up front, don't hesitate to say, these are the things we don't know that we need to validate, and here's how we're gonna validate them. Because I can tell you that people looking at your presentation will have those doubts. They might not ask it, but to know that you have those same questions means you have control over it, and that you're gonna come to some resolution. So if you just say, we don't know if we can convince people, to buy. We don't know what's the best, whether they're willing to pay up front, and here's what we're gonna do to validate it. It really goes a long way.
I just had 3 other points. The first one was the contamination issue. I think we heard from the other group that it's not necessarily contaminated at the tap, but it sounds like you guys think it is contaminated at the tap. So just some resolution as to, I don't know if there are tests out there about that or what, but I mean, there's a lot that happens in between collection at the tap to drinking the water. So is it possible that it's just dirty buckets, dirty cans, and not necessarily a dirty tap? And through container usage, maybe something else would change. So where is that contamination taking place, and is that actually correlated to, diarrheal illness and waterborne disease? That would be really, really critical. The second one is, why aren't people boiling their water? There's 85% of the population that's not. Is it a behavioral issue? Is it a cost issue? What exactly is it? And so how are you going to get to that second tier target population after you, sort of fill out, the 15% that are already boiling their water? And the third thing is ask for more money. $10,000 is literally a drop in the bucket. So